Delich.
Delich, yeah, Delich in American, yeah.
I'm thinking too much about it, and I'm going to mess it up immediately.
That's all good.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to PVD Horror Podcast. We are joined here with our guest, actor Sam Delich, the Australian actor in the upcoming film Christmas Bloody Christmas, which is going to be exclusive to Shudder December 9th. I feel like I'm yelling because I was so nervous about saying your name wrong.
Delich, yeah. So everyone is. Look, I'll take Delich, Delish, Delic, whatever you want.
All right.
Let's roll it.
That works.
Thanks for joining us, Sam.
My pleasure.
All right. So, Sam, you have a lot of cool upcoming projects, such as The Last Days of Space Age, which is the first original Australian Disney Plus series, and the second season of the hit series, The PM's Daughter. What inspired you to become an actor?
Oh man, that's a hard question. I sort of had an affinity to it. Like when I was a kid, I sort of, I don't know, I naturally took to it. But the thing is, I never really did it professionally until I was into my 20s. I did drama in high school, and I was really lucky that I had a teacher that sort of saw something in me, and she pulled me aside after class one day and she said, look, if you want to do this properly, I think you have something. And I was completely unaware. I mean, I was just doing it for fun. I never thought much of it. I was just, doing like plays and things like that in class. And then as soon as she put those words into my head, I thought, oh my God, I mean, I've loved cinema since I was a kid. I actually originally thought I'd be behind the scenes when I was younger. That was something I was considering. And then from there, I said, I'm from Perth in Western Australia. So acting is not on anybody's mind, and there's no, there's no Hollywood there. Let's just say that. And then I said, how do I do it? And I didn't even know what an agent was or anything. And when I was 17, I auditioned for a couple of the bigger drama schools in Australia, and I got into WAPA, which is the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, which is sort of the equivalent to Juilliard in America. And I was really lucky. I was one of 18 and got in there, and had the best 3 years of my life. And then from there, my passion just grew, and I was lucky enough to, leave and get an agent. And then it's just the usual sort of grind, and you find yourself here.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think you're our third Australian person in film, I should say, because one was we had a filmmaker, 2 filmmakers, and now you're our first Australian actor. So,
oh, great,
pretty cool. So this is a Christmas movie, obviously, that we're going to be talking about. Christmas Bloody Christmas. It is directed by Joe Begos, who is native to our state of Rhode Island here, actually. So, Sam, could you just give everyone just like a quick summary of the plot line for the film?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's relatively straightforward. It's set in a small town in rural America, and it follows Tori Toombs, Riley Dandy, who's a record store owner, and her employee, her trying too hard to get laid employee, Robbie Reynolds, played by myself, and essentially just follows them over the course of the night and their sort of drunken shenanigans and antics. And without giving too much away, as the night descends, chaos ensues, and a robotic Santa gets into the mix, and bad things happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy film, and I love the characters in this film. I feel like Joe did a great job making them feel so real. Having like everyday debates about films and music. You and Riley nailed like every scene. How was it being able to work with her on this project?
Oh, I mean, Riley was just excellent. We were saying this earlier this week that if our chemistry didn't work out, it would have been an absolute disaster. You're always rolling the dice. I mean, a lot of the time you meet people the day of shooting or the night before. We met at a bar the night before, and thankfully we just hit it off, and she was excellent. I mean, she's such a hard worker. She's so incredibly talented. And to sustain a performance of that energy over months of night shoots is tough for anybody. And with just that much dialogue and that much action, I just thought she was so incredible. And we really just bounced off each other. I mean, Joe really let us both improvise a lot, which was really lucky. I mean, most directors, they stick to the scripts, have it word perfect. but she was incredible. She, you know, she really kept up, and we would just throw ideas out there and riff and play. And I mean, some of the long Steadicam walk and talks in the movie, you know, half of that's just pure improv, which is pretty incredible.
That was cool, because I was sitting there, I was telling Dave and Josh about that. You know, like sometimes like with films like that, like it wouldn't work like that, the dialogue of just walking down the street. But I think you guys captured that because it just worked so good. And like I was saying before, it was so realistic, like going back and forth. Like it'd be like conversations that myself and Dave would have about music and films. And so it definitely worked for that film.
Oh, exactly. And a lot of it was, I mean, a lot of it was in the original script. I mean, Joe is such a big music fan and obviously a diehard horror fan. And he had all these references in there, and then would, you know, he'd be yelling stuff out behind the monitor and tell us, he'd be like, yo, fucking riff on Blumhouse, or, you know, like add in that alien line or whatever, you know, and that was awesome. And it's just that creative energy, I think, really helps bring the relationship to life. And like I said, I mean, a lot of acting in bigger budget things that I've done is, you know, A, B, and C. You learn your lines, you hit your mark, you might get a little tweak here and there, and then you're on your way. But this was really just open, and even from a cinematography standpoint, like everybody, Brian Sowell, our DOP, you know, constantly improvising. Oh, you know what? The light's hitting it that way. Let's go there. Why don't we just get a shot from the roof? It was just a constant changing thing, which I think, I mean, compared to big budget things, that indie sort of collaboration is just incredible.
Yeah. And like you were just saying, like how Joe was kind of like throwing things out about Blumhouse. There was one of the main topics that you guys had a debate about was Pet Sematary 2. And so I think that's one of like Joe's favorite films.
Yes.
Like, so I thought I also feel as though that part 2 is definitely one of like a hidden gem. And I know in the film, Robbie has a different take on it, but I want to know, what does Sam really think about that? Do you like the first film, or what do you think about the two films?
I've seen Pet Sematary 1, 2, and I actually, funnily enough, watched the remake about a month ago with actually Jason Clarke, who's an Australian actor as well. Yeah. I like 2. I think there's a certain cheesy elements to those films that you don't really see a lot today. And although there is definitely some homages to things like that in this film, I like the absurdity and the fun of Pet Sematary 2. I think when you think about what it is, you know, it's so obscure, it's so odd. So I think it needs that campiness to it. Whereas, for example, when you remake certain films, if you take it too seriously and make it too dark, sometimes it just doesn't quite read. Which is what I actually think Joe's done really well with this, is he's gone back to that sort of 80s, 70s, 80s, early 90s slasher sort of vibe, where there is the characters are real, but there is a heightened element to the movie in itself. And you sort of have to lean into the absurdity of it, which I think is what makes it work.
Yeah, you're right. There's like this dynamic where the characters are supposed to, like, the relationship's supposed to look super real, and the dynamics are supposed to be super real. And then there's this other looming thing following them that's like insane. So
it's like insanity, and you have to lean into it. Like I said, I mean, because the dialogue at the start of the film, it's as if they're just the best of mates, and they're just riffing and all the references, as anyone would. But you're right. As soon as Santa comes in and it goes to, well, it all goes to shit. You sort of have to be like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, I remember being on set seeing Abe Ben Ruby, who plays Santa, and he's amazing. But that actor is, you know, he's 6'6", 6'7". He's huge. Yeah. And you're running down the street with this guy in a Santa suit covered in blood chasing you. And there's a little kid in you that goes, what the fuck am I doing right now?
Yeah. So I think it's very smart to create like a holiday horror film. They become like a staple of fans, and they become like people start to create like lists. Like, Dave, you have one that's called like Holiday Fear. And I notice online people already have this film in their top 10 films of Christmas. Like, how did you get involved in this project?
Look, really like any other project. I mean, my American manager sent me this through and said, would you be interested in putting yourself on tape? Just like any other film would. And I don't, honestly, to tell you the truth, I wasn't really looking at doing a horror film. I think, a lot of the time, unless you're lucky enough to be asked to do, say, a really big budget or really art house high-end horror film, your first instinct sort of goes, oh, is this just going to be another sort of straight to DVD, shit show? But I thought, well, I'll read the script anyway and see what I think. And within 10 pages, I thought, this doesn't read at all like a horror film. I mean, there's just so much dialogue and so much believable banter, which is what I think a lot of modern horror films lack.
Yeah.
They're all about, it's either just all blood and gore, limbs getting hacked off, or all jump scares. Whereas this, I thought, this is reads like High Fidelity or something. Like, what's going on, And then when the horror elements come in, you go like, oh, this is just so much fun, and this writing has such flourish to it that you can really picture the world. And my initial reaction was, holy shit. I was my friend was next to me at the time as I started reading it, and then I gave her the script, and she said, Sam, I don't know if you know this, but you are Robbie. Like, that is you. And she was right. And then as soon as I put myself on tape, I just had a gut feeling about it. And Joe obviously thought the same, which was awesome. And then, I just had a meeting on Zoom and things like that, and it all lined up.
Cool. I got to ask you, since this is a Christmas film, have you ever experienced the kind of Christmas that you're supposed to be experiencing in this film? Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming an Australian Christmas is much different.
Look, I mean, relatives can get pretty scary sometimes, but thankfully no creepy uncle has tried to kill me in a Santa suit. No, I think that's something unique about this as well, is that, I live in Sydney, Australia. I'm from Perth in Western Australia. And our Christmases are, I'm trying to work it out for you guys, at 40 degrees Celsius, which is like into the hundreds for you guys. Super hot. You're wearing shorts and having a barbecue, and that's Christmas for us here. Literally putting a shrimp on the barbie. But in the States, you're right. Like, you guys, it's winter, it's cold. It is that old school Christmas feeling, and I had never in my life experienced that. So kind of being in the middle of it with all the lights and the snow machines and things like that, I thought it was pretty amazing. And it just felt, the cool thing about it is it did feel like it had that very traditional Christmas element to it. Like, it's cold, you're warming yourself up with whiskey, you're in a cozy little house, things like that. I think the environment is a character in of itself.
Yeah. So since you star as a character that is really passionate about films and music, what are some of your favorite movies and songs?
Oh man, that's such a hard question. Favorite movie? My favorite film of all time, and this has been since I was a kid, is actually the first Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay.
Solely because I think, I mean Spielberg, I would consider it a masterpiece, but I think it's one of those things that it holds up today because all the characters are super real, in the sense of, you have a heightened world of dinosaurs and all this craziness going on, which is, in of itself totally unbelievable. But you have this human story to it, and it's so grounded that you go, great, it's just people in an environment. Whereas I think, particularly with a lot of remakes of some of these bigger IPs, is that everything is sort of not believable, if that makes sense. They've heightened every bit of the world, which is sort of sad because it takes away what those were. So I would say, Jurassic Park, and as far as horror is concerned, I mean, The Thing is probably my favorite horror film.
Okay.
Such a brilliant, contained film. Kurt Russell is obviously in his element. Peak Kurt. Things like that. I love the first Alien. Again, I think when you contain something, particularly a creature feature, it's really great. I'm trying to think of other horror films I love. I actually really love the Descent. I think The Descent is a terrific modern horror film. What else? As far as music is concerned, look, I listen to absolutely everything. I mean, I had my Spotify Wrapped come up the other day, and I think it said I listened to 78 different genres or something like that. And the funny thing is, I did like some of the bands in the film, like the Ramones and things like that. But, a lot of metal, modern metal, I actually quite like as well. I mean, I grew up listening to like Parkway Drive and things like that when I was a kid. Yeah, look, a bit of everything. I was doing an interview earlier today, and I brought up the fact that John Legend's Christmas album is a secret little love of mine that I'll play around this holiday time in amongst Mariah Carey and the Michael Bublé.
Michael Bublé. Alicia Keys just released a new one. That's not bad. Add that to your list.
I'll be spinning from Alicia. I mean, it's funny because you go into any department store or even grocery store. Or, God, I was in a hardware store the other day, and it's just the same jingle bells just over and over again. And I find the Christmas season starts earlier and earlier every year. I don't know how it is for you guys.
It's the same, literally the same. We were in September, and I think they were rolling it out. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, crazy capitalist world we live in. It's just, the earlier the better.
Yep.
Money.
That's right. So you mentioned that much of this character was pretty much you, so it wasn't hard for you to get into the role. What aspects of the character? And I have to ask you, because there's so many like references to movies and music. Did you basically get homework so that you could kind of know what you were talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was really honest with Joe when I was cast, and I said, look, man, there's a bunch of obscure music and film references in here that like only the most diehard of fans are going to know. And he said, no, absolutely. So he made me a Spotify playlist, which was amazing. It had like 100 different, grungy metal bands on it, which was awesome. So that was a great way to help get into character, and then gave me some film references. He really did highlight Terminator, obviously, as a big influence.
Sure.
But
Part 1 or 2?
Well, I mean, he said 2.
Yeah.
I think 1 is also brilliant. I think 2 is probably a slightly better movie, but there is something real OG about 1 that I quite enjoy. He highlighted, films that I had seen that I actually brought up with him, like a Green Room, for example. More for some of the grungy, Tony elements of Robbie himself as a character. I mean, that's one of my favorite modern horror films. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So stuff like that, but he also highlighted the fact that it's not going to be as heavy as a project like that. There is a fun element to it, so I want you to bring that energy to Robbie. And then it was just a bit of back and forth, and he really let me have creative control. I mean, I think he's an optimist, Robbie. He's always trying to find the best outcome. And I mean, let's be real. I think his through line in the movie is he desperately wants the girl and wants to get laid.
Yeah. He's persistent.
And I think any young man at some point in their 20s can relate to that, I think.
Yeah.
So I certainly didn't have to work too hard for that. But he really let me, just riff. And that was the best thing. I mean, the fact that I could come in, improvise jokes, improvise scenes with Riley, and he would happily shoot it. He would come to us after we got stuff in the can, and he'd be like, look, is there anything that you guys want to try that you haven't tried yet? Yeah. Like, let's do it. There's no right or wrong. Even if it's just a look or a little one line or a little moment that ends up in the final cut, I think it's worth it. Whereas, some of the bigger budget stuff I've done, bigger budget stuff I've done, some of that creativity is certainly lacking, I think.
Sure. I was like watching the film, and I'm like, I wish I could experience this film not getting all these movie references and see what it would be like watching it from like somebody who has no idea what you guys were talking about. Because I just it's been a totally different experience. It's really smart for them to have it on Shudder, because people are going to, obviously, if you're watching it on Shudder, you're going to get a lot of those references. But
in some way, I like that because, like I said, I didn't know all the references when I read it. And I thought, geez, there's some, really fucking obscure films going on here. But Joe, and particularly with his previous work as well, he doesn't make films just to please a huge audience. He makes films that he wants to make. He makes films for horror fans. And he doesn't apologize about that. And that's what I really love. Because regardless of whether you understand the references to Pet Sematary 2 or the Ramones or whatever it is, you can see the passion there. You go like, oh, fuck. This is like so obscure that like, I don't know. I just love directors that don't treat an audience dumb.
No.
Yeah.
Which is
it reminded me of a horror version of like High Fidelity, where
Totally.
throughout the movie, John Cusack's just referencing music that the casual music fan would not know.
Just random stuff. And look, that's what I love. And like, even I love a lot of Joe Swanberg stuff. I mean, it's not horror, but there's
Me too.
I love the improvisational aspect of it. I mean, a lot of his films are pure improv, like Drinking Buddies and stuff like that. And I love and Easy, and I loved that there was, although very different genre-wise and tone-wise, I loved that there were scenes where we were able to play similar to that sort of style, where it would just be an idea that you'd play on, or maybe there'd be 4 lines and he'd be like, let's just take these 4 lines and let's just see where this banter goes. And if that takes you to the other side of the room because that feels real, then we're going to shoot around that and make sure we get that. And that's how I think you get the best performance out of any actor. Because Joe said this to me. He was like, Sam, I fucking hate marks. I hate it when I fucking put a piece of tape on the ground. You got to fucking hit that. It was like a fucking wooden robot. And that's true, because most filmmaking is just hit your little green piece of tape on the ground, pull focus, say your word, don't move too much, and great. But the fact that Brian Sowell, our DOP, and Joe, who was also behind the camera, were able to move with us and pull focus brilliantly as well, just creates for a real world, which you don't see a lot of. And I bring up Swanberg because I think he's one of the only ones I think at the moment doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I do really, really enjoy his stuff. I think he's kind of brilliant in what he creates, and I wish.
Oh, he's like one of the number ones on my list to work with. I mean, I just the ability, because I'm a huge fan of improvisation, and I just love the idea of being able to riff and then work around that. And it's just like I said, it's so rare, and I mean, even in big stuff, sometimes dialogue can be so stilted. So it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are. I mean, a shit line is a shit line. It doesn't matter. I mean, we can see the greatest actors in the world, go through absolute shit. So that's sort of, I think for me as well. But and I see this more in American indie cinema than I do in Australian indie cinema. Is that big dialogue sort of film, like heaps and heaps of banter, which I love. Whereas I love Australian independent cinema, but I find it's very very dark and moody. Is sort of what we do really well, and we do it amazingly. Like David Michaud and the Blue Tongue Films guys. Things like Animal Kingdom and more recently The Stranger, which I thought was a brilliant film from them, and Joel Edgerton and stuff. So I think we do that really well. But I think when it comes to banter and large dialogue, I think Americans are the kings of that.
Now, this film made its premiere at the Beyond Fest. Now, you were in attendance for that, right?
I was, yeah.
Now, how was that experience? Like, just being with the cast and crew, and then just with all the fans that were just able to see it. Because the pictures I had seen, that everybody had like a Santa hat on and took like a picture with Joe, and everybody had their middle finger up, and it was just
it was awesome, man. I mean, like to have 500 horror fans packed in a theater. It was the people that were there were who this movie was made for, and that's what was awesome. You're right, they did understand the references and all the little jokes they got, and so to hear that laughter, to hear their reactions, and just to have a good time. I think that's what I really took from it, was the fact that it was a lot funnier, the final cut, than I thought it was going to be, because as you're shooting it, you're running around screaming the whole time. In your head, you're like, this is going to be the heaviest thing in the world. But when you actually see it cut together, you go, oh, that's hilarious. That moment, wow, I didn't expect that moment to be in there. So that was great. And I think you can ask any actor the first time they watch a cut of the film that, they're just watching themselves and holding their breath and going, oh, please don't be shit. But more recently, it premiered at Monster Fest in Australia, which I was in Melbourne for last week. And it was really interesting seeing an Australian's audience perspective on it as well. Again, a lot of horror fans there, and they laughed in bits where the Americans didn't laugh at, vice versa. And they really highlighted the chemistry between me and Riley, which was awesome. And so it was nice hearing that feedback, because ultimately they're the main acting scenes, and I mean action is sort of the second half of the film. The first half of the film really is buddy drama, and
Mhm.
it was nice hearing that dynamic worked really well.
Yeah, and the special effects, man, were just so fucking crazy in this fucking film. So it's just like there's a scene. I'm not gonna give it away, but it was totally nuts. Like seeing everything, how it went down and how everything was just put together. Can't wait for everybody to check this out, because I think all horror fans are gonna really enjoy this film, and you did a great job in it, man.
Oh, thanks, bro. And you're right. The effects team did an amazing job as well. And every effect in the movie is practical, which is so rare, incredibly rare.
That goes a long way. It's really important to a lot of horror fans.
It really does,
especially like our old school ones,
Yeah, exactly. And it does add to that throwback feel, and especially it adds to the fun element of it. I mean, there's moments that aren't meant to be the most real, believable death in the world. Mm-hmm. There are moments where it does go into that heightened territory, and an audience can tell that it's a body double. They know that it's a fake head, but the fact that they can see that head being crushed, split open,
that's all we want.
Whatever, like it does. In some ways, it doesn't treat an audience dumb. It goes like, this is fake, but let's push this as far as humanly possible. Right. Versus like, let's just make this CGI and try to make this the most realistic death in the world, which actually in some way has a reverse effect, because you're like, I can so clearly fucking tell that that's CGI.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's the same as the Jurassic Park thing where I brought up, where it's like, you build the animatronic dinosaur, it's way better than having a computed velociraptor.
Yeah, exactly. And back to what you were saying about like the dialogue, I love the movie doesn't try to go beyond what it is. So like you have the dynamics playing out, you guys are just, it's like you said, it's like the guy's trying to get laid. It's like they're friends, and they just leave it at that. It's not like this secret subplot where he's like puppy love and like we're supposed to feel sorry for him. It literally is just like, let's let this play out, and then the craziness ensues and it goes from there. It doesn't try to be something it's not, and I really do appreciate that.
No, I think that was a big thing for me as well. Is the worst thing you could have done with a film is create 1,000 little subplots and delve so deep into characters' backstories and arcs that it just gets so convoluted, and then it takes so long until any action happens, and then and we've all seen films like that, and I think it's the perfect amount of fleshing out characters, the perfect amount of backstory, the perfect amount of, what it is really is you just care about them and their relationship, and that's it. He just sets it up as two super, super lovable people who work in a small town. And that's what people in a small town do. They just riff about random shit. Yeah. There's no big city drama going on with the wife at home, the kids, and the whatever it is. He's not a spy for the CIA. There's no, he so easily could have gone into, the government made this robot, so we got to go into some government.
Yeah. They don't even really explain much about that.
You don't need it. It is what it is. It's a Santa robot Christmas film.
Yeah,
and it doesn't pretend to be anything else.
Santa meets chopping mall, and that's all it is.
That's it, and that's what you want. And I think, I hope that audiences go into this just to have a good time, which is rare these days. I do love a deep, gritty film. We all do, but sometimes at the end of the day, you just want to be entertained. Absolutely. I've just finished watching Wednesday on Netflix, the Addams Family, and although story-wise you could say it's the same as any other kids sort of show, I look at Jenna Ortega's performance and I go, great, it's so fun to watch her, it's so great, and I'm having a good time watching this show. Right. Yep. And there is something to be said about that, I think, which such a dark world that unfortunately we live in at the moment, it's nice to just shut off for an hour and a half and watch some Christmas carnage.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. So awesome.
Exactly.
Sam, I know you got to get going. You've had a busy day and you probably still have more, but thank you so much for joining us, man. Thank you.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks heaps. I look forward to checking it out when it comes out.
Yep.
All right, everybody, December 9th on Shudder, Christmas Bloody Christmas. Check it out. You're going to love it. Have a great night.
Take it easy.